Following a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House, a new trade deal was announced on Tuesday. Under the agreement, U.S. goods will face zero tariffs, while Philippine exports to the U.S. will incur a 19% tariff, slightly below the 20% initially threatened by Trump. The deal comes after a year of U.S. Philippines trade deficits amounting to nearly $5 billion on a total of $23.5 billion in bilateral trade. Trump praised Marcos as a tough negotiator and said the trade numbers would grow over time. Here's what the U.S. president said.
Well, it's tough. He's a very tough negotiator. So far, we're not there because he's negotiating too tough. In fact, I used to like him better than I do now. He's too tough. But we'll probably agree to something. But he's a strong negotiator. He loves your country.
Marcos emphasized the tariff rate deal with the U.S., a significant achievement. He commends the Philippines' strong alliance with the United States, but did not comment on the new tariff details. Protesters gathered near the White House, urging Marcos to address concerns over U.S. immigration raids affecting Filipino Americans. Here's what the Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said.
Of course, we're all very happy to be here to once again reaffirm the very strong ties between the Philippines and the United States, ties that go back over 100 years. And considering the context in which we live these days, especially in my part of the world, this has evolved into as important a relationship as is possible to have. We must remember that the United States is our only treaty partner in the Philippines, and that has stood us in good stead over the years, certainly through the Second World War, and the cultural memory of all Filipinos, down to even the school children, is that our strongest, closest, most reliable ally has always been the United States. And that is something that we value, that we are grateful for, and that we will continue to foster as we go on. With the leadership of President Trump, I am very confident that we will be able to achieve that. I think it is worthwhile to remember that it was President Trump who, in his first term, characterized the relationship between the Philippines and the United States as ironclad. And that has been necessarily the case since that time that you made that statement, sir. And it is something that the Philippines will always hold close to its heart. Thank you once again, and we are honored, and it is our great pleasure to be here and to visit with the President of the United States. Thank you, sir.
It's my great honor.
While Trump alluded to potential military cooperation and a future visit to China, details on the full trade deal's terms remain unclear. We're now joined by Jim Rice, who's a professor of international law. He joins us from Vigan in the Philippines. Thank you very much, Jim, for joining us. Jim, what are your feelings about this trade deal? Obviously, we don't know the full terms of it yet, but this must be a relief to many people in the Philippines. What are your thoughts, Jim?
Well, I see this in a wider context than just simply the rates of 19%, which I think your viewers ought to remember is really a tax on Americans, and the Philippine government will not be paying the tariffs. But the wider context that I see is that the Philippines, as was mentioned in your introduction, is a linchpin ally in an increasingly dangerous Western Pacific. And during the Biden administration, the U.S., the Philippines, Japan, and Australia put together an alliance, I think, which was very cleverly or wisely done, in which these nations are allying together in order to counter the very real threat from the PRC in not only over Taiwan, but also in the Philippines in terms of its incursions into the exclusive economic zone that China illegally claims for itself. So that's one point that I think is important to remember. This shouldn't be just seen exclusively in terms of the tariff rates. But secondly, I think that what Trump has been doing by imposing what I think is not a very favorable tariff rate on the Philippines is he's putting Marcos under domestic pressure. And Marcos faces real pressure, not only from the very fragmented far left wing, but also from a resurgent Duterte faction, the former, in the form of the former president's daughter and her allies. So I really think this is not a wise move on the part of Trump.
Yes, Jim. However, you did briefly mention China there, but how might this trade agreement here accelerate the Philippines' strategic realignment away from Chinese supply lines, if it will?
Well, that's the point. It won't. The idea is to try and encourage trade and encourage military alliance and encourage people-to-people contacts between the United States and the Philippines. Not only because it's an effort to try and counter the danger that the PRC poses to this region, but also because it's the right thing to do.
Yes, Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. For our next story, we